you see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. I have some thoughts on implementation gap, which I go through a little, different points. That why is steel is a problem, because we see that steel, even though more than 1,000 years, more than 100 years, we are thinking about safety of disaster, but we keep seeing different, issues. It's happening, and this escalating this issue of the natural hazard. It shows itself in different way, despite all of the actions that we take.
Yes.
The question always comes, this implementation gap that I always say, despite available know-how, policies, resources, still our living environment, building infrastructures lack acceptable resilience and safety. Why? I think because still we are suffering from fragmented disaster risk strategies. I mean, prevention, preparedness, response, recovery, they're all, even though they are interrelated, but still the actions are taken toward these things are fragmented. They're not integrated and coherent yet. One of the reasons is that usually these have different stakeholders and beneficiaries, and there is insufficient cooperation and integration of stakeholders and beneficiaries, as well as between the know-how and policies and on-ground implementation. I put on-ground means what is really getting implemented, And also we have isolated approach to urban safety, to natural hazard. The climate change people, they have a different thinking. When you talk about people in the water and energy, they have a different approach. The earthquake people have different approach, and this cause and since conventional methods neglect or overlook systematic interdependency and cascading effects, means we natural hazard probably don't sit down with the water and energy stress people. Those are dealing with the stress on the cities due to this or climate change. And each of us wants to take our own action, because I thought to the people with the energy or climate section, climate changes, they have a different view to the urban resiliency than we as an earthquake engineer, because we look at the physical damage vulnerability. They don't have that physical damage and vulnerability in climate change. They see it in another way, therefore. That was the issue. Now, when we look at the implementation challenges that we are discussing today, it is not something new, probably. If you look at 5,000 years, implementation of know-how has always been a long-standing challenges of human being, in my opinion. It's not, 21st century or 20th century's issue. Human being implement a know-how either when they feel it is immediate benefit, or it will be a matter of life and death. When it becomes to that point, they try to find a solution and to implement it, and try all type of solution. Therefore, they have to come to kind of case of emergency to implement something. Therefore, on the day-to-day life, they don't feel to do it, they ignore it. Therefore, we might need to have a paradigm shift or system thinking to find an effective way to convince people to implement more and more and more. Not during the time of emergency, during the time of the, daily life, day-to-day situation. And I have said it before, and everybody has said it, implementation of science actually is an art. It means beyond knowing, it is the art of convincing the implementation. When you want to, when you talk to the child, it needs a way to talk to the child to ask them to implement something. You have to talk to the children's language. You have to talk to for them to ask them to do something. Otherwise, they won't do it. If you look at the holy books, for example, I look at Quran and other things. It says knowledge and wisdom and its implementation. There is actually, this is a verse in Quran, oh Allah, expand our knowledge and wisdom and its implementation. It comes all these three together. Or in one chapter of Quran, for example, it says, in the name of Allah, the beneficent, merciful, I swear by the time, most surely humans are in a state of loss, except those who have cognitive belief, understanding, and do good deeds. Means he brought the understanding with the deed and joined together in mutual teaching of truth with patience and consistency. Or in another place, implementation is the appreciation of Allah's guidance, of God's guidance. Means if we implement, means we appreciating, which ensures human sustainability, either in the personal or community and growth. Therefore, implementation is appreciation of our Creator in order to have human sustainability. And other books also the same thing, spiritual, technical guidelines are like doctors' prescriptions. The doctors write prescriptions. If we read the prescriptions 1,000 times, we don't get cure. We have to go get the medicine and use the medicine to get cure. Therefore, guidelines or everything that we write, if people, just, okay, it's so nice, they just keep reading it, keep understanding it. As long as you don't go and buy this medicine and take the medicine, you will not get cured. This implementation, I remember I took this at the notes I have from 1990. That, for example, I was comparing the, different developing and underdeveloped country where the knowledge is. And this is from 1992 or 1993, this part. It goes back to 1993, I think. I have mentioned over there different points, and 3 points which I want to emphasize again. We should make a seismic safety a priority and a culture. We should make a culture of it. We have to meet the needs and realities. I would elaborate what do I mean by that. And we have to translate safety into economic, social, and human values. In other words, and then here people need to see the footprint of science and technology in their cities. People understand money these days. If they see some benefit, financial benefit, or if they feel a life benefit, I mean, that's what, is that people trust the doctors more, I always said, than engineers, because they know to go to a doctor. I mean, not these days, people don't trust doctors anyway. People don't trust anybody. But usually they trust doctors because, they know that if they don't listen to him, they're going to die, or they're going to get sick, or they're going to be disabled. They have a feel of emergency to them. And also, they understand money. Therefore, if it say safety is money, they can digest it more. They know that if they put safety is benefit to your financial, they will understand more. Therefore, these things, we are, since 1990, we mentioned that done. I mean, we mentioned this point. And then we came to the IDRiM establishment. And we have achievement. When I talked from 1990 to today, we had achievements, definitely. I think IDRiM initiatives have promoted the implementation of science concept. And I think IDRiM Society provides a forum of dialogue among experts with disaster reduction. That's a success story. And still, we have this challenge, how to implement the implement of science concept. I mean, we have developed this concept, but again, how to implement this implementation? And my proposal is we have to try to provide an answer to a paradox of knowledge versus action. As I mentioned in the history, in the holy books, they have this point. We need effective action. It needs usable, implementable, doable, affordable, and culturally compatible solution for safety, comfort, sustainable development. In order to have effective action, I think we should put more emphasis on system thinking to have a full understanding of the problem. And we need an integrated nexus approach between the climate people, water, energy, natural hazard, social development to implement these things. Means we have to avoid from fragmented actions. And definitely we need effective engagement. See, we have engagement. It's not effective yet. Of end users, means people in our disaster reduction efforts. And other things can be also added to it. It's not limited to these things. This paradox of knowledge versus action we have the knowledge. We know how to reduce the disaster risk. But still, implementation lags is missing. I think we have enough knowledge to how to have a safety. But still, after all of this, we suffer from unregulated construction in high hazard zone in many places in the world. Even in the United States of America. You cannot believe the quality of construction, how low it is. And it's become, instead of improving, I mean, in China, you see the construction quality is increasing. In the US, the quality of construction is decreasing. I mean, people prefer to buy older homes than new homes. The same, for example, famous builders today, they make a lower quality of housing than before. I mean, in Iran, the construction quality is improving, but in this country, for example, construction quality is decreasing. And even for many other things, you know, the quality of a car, it become more options in it, more electronic, but the quality of the car is decreasing. The automotive knowledge has been increased, but the quality of the, I mean, I have a Mercedes-Benz 1981, which I still have it, it's old. And I bought in 1995 another one, and 2007, and 2022. And my wife said, you know, my old Mercedes-Benz is much better than the previous ones. It's low quality, but it has lots of electronic, but the whole car is lower quality. But the knowledge of is much increased. Why there is a gap, even why the car is become like this, or why the housing is economic constraint. Short-term cost versus long-term benefit. Because if they want to make the car or house good quality, becomes so much, they become unaffordable. There is also lack of political will or enforcement or public awareness. Even though we have so much information right now in click of button, but I think our awareness is decreasing. Because we look at this system that, you know, short messages, we want to have a short, like a sandwich, you know, just give me capsule knowledge. People don't have patience to listen to a complete sentence anymore. And also is misaligned incentive. Developers or people prioritize profit over safety. They look at profit. And the question comes, how can we turn know-how into actionable, doable, affordable, and widely adopted solutions? I just want to go through it. I'm not going to go very detailed. How much time we have, by the way?
Well, you can have about, say, 20 minutes or 30 minutes to talk more.
Totally?
Well, then after that, we can also have some, say, 30 minutes.
Okay. Therefore, let me
discussion.
just go quickly.
Okay.
The barriers can be economic constraint, which I have mentioned, governance and policy changes. I'm not going to go through it. Social behavior factors, technical and logistical issues. These can be always, barrier. I think in order to have a understand, we have to have a gap identification. I don't know who gave me this slide. It's not my slide, but I, a little modify it. I found it in my note. That we have procedural gaps and substantive gap. That we have to obtain what are to identify gaps. Is the root cause of gap between the science and policy, or is between the scientist and end user? Where is the source of it? Again, I don't know the source of this one. I had it in my note. I don't know where it's totally mine or somebody else gave me. Oh. I think in order to have a strategy to bridge this gap from know-how to action, or from the knowledge versus action, we need to create demand for safety. It is like creating demand for the health. And I think we should have it as a human right. Because most of these human rights group, which they are active, their final objective is saving human life. If there's a prisoner or there's a war or there's something like this human rights group. I think we should have, I mentioned this one probably several years ago. Again, I'm thinking this topic. That safety is our human right. Demanding for this basic right requires a society and risk-aware society requires effective risk communication. Public should demand for safe housing, safe cities, safe infrastructure, reliable energy, good water management, clean air, all of this. They should ask from their governments, and a right that should be observed by decision makers and governments. People do not like to be regulated anymore. Therefore, instead of trying to regulate people, especially regulate by the governments, that you need to follow this, you need to this, you need, you must. Instead, they should ask the governments and their authorities provide the required infrastructure and system that these building codes or building standards could be easily implemented. And effective implementation requires demand-driven science. It's like mobile technology, like mobile phone. It is a demand-driven science because people, they want it. Day to day is increasing the technology. And also the governments are providing the platform, the infrastructure to this to be implemented. I think there is two success stories. One is that medical doctors on this mobile phone. We become so dependent on this that is creating demand and there is the gap between the people using it and technology is very low. We should make disaster reduction affordable and financially sustainable through different methods. We need to strengthen government and policy enforcement. We should go toward, instead of being mandatory, it should be phased regulation. Decentralized and accountability. And using microfinancing and all this. We need behavioral change. And we need to simplify and localize technology. Affordable solution. Do it yourself. And leveraging local material and knowledge. I mean, I can elaborate. I try to here have some points that from those and compare between Japan, Iran, and Turkey. Because always in Japan, I think they have been successful. Probably Nori will think something else, but I think they're successful. And I think between the knowledge and implementation is the lowest gap in Japan. Probably knowledge in other countries are here, like in US, but the implementation is here. There's a long gap. But Japan case, I think it is, I believe that the gap between knowledge and implementation is low. Because I think they have a strong central oversight. They have independent audit, severe penalty for violators. While, for example, in Iran or Turkey, we do not have that. We have a low level accountability. Or, for example, in Turkey, there's lots of corruption in construction and all these things, which showed in that last year earthquake. Public trust, I think, is high in Japan. In Iran, is improved since BAM earthquake. And Turkey is also same kind of things. Economic incentives are very limited because people, I mean, the governments, they are very generous for disaster response, relief and rescue operation, but for prevention incentives, they are not. But I think Japan is very successful. Urban planning, again, we have urban planning, implementation is not, and we also suffer from informal settlement, which has economic incentive, technology adaptation, cultural mindset. I mean, we are very reactive than, looking in the long term, and political will the same thing. And these are the reasons that why we have a gap. Here we have less gap, and here we have more gap. Despite the high very good knowledge that we have in Iran and even Turkey, the gap is high because there is a gap between the knowledge and action, because there's not enough economic incentives or people's mind or culture or many other things. I mentioned system thinking. I'm going to go very quickly from now on, because I think the solution is, because we live in a complex, in an urban area, which is a complex system of a system with many stakeholders, beneficiaries, that needs to be resilient to multiple stresses, natural hazard, water, energy, and all of these things, in order to have sustainable development. So I think that one of the approach, moving from fragmented, we need to go to system approach or nexus, which I have mentioned. Now I want to elaborate very quickly on these two, and then I would stop talking. How? We need to a paradigm shift the system toward enhancing synergy between disaster response and disaster system. I mean, both of them. We need to integrate all of disciplines. We cannot solve the problem by one group. We need system thinking to really identify all problems. And then we have to create nexus on that. I mean, all of you know very well about these issues. It's like the Molavis, which I mentioned last week. These days, problems cannot be solved by engineering solutions. We need all of them. Therefore, in system thinking, we have to cover all these disciplines. Engineers for design, governance for supervision, legal system, economic system, social system, cultural system, and environmental. They all have to work together. And safety will fail if we are weak and misaligned, which I have mentioned, misalignment, or we are in conflict. For example, in the housing or anything, everybody works by their own, from the builder. I mean, this is fragmented cooperation. We need to have integration first, bring these sectors together. Then we have to create synergy between them, look at them all, because this is a gradual step. And then we have to make them all working for one objective in a system approach. And then we should make them all have one. Then we can reach safety, security, and comfort and everything. Let me pass this, right? For example, for the urban system, urban resilience, if you want to have urban resilience, we should look at the urban resilience systems. Why we have a city? This is abstraction hierarchy. We break down and map the whole elements. In order to have a safe urban, all of these 275 parameters which we have extracted, they need to work together in order to achieve a safe physical, a good socioeconomic, and all of this. If these elements, they do not work together, we cannot reach our objectives. Now, for example, if you want to look at social and economic, how they all interrelate together. Not all of them play a key role. We can obtain through the system analysis what are the key roles. But we cannot ignore each of them, from education to finance to emergency, all of them. We need to model them. And when you model, for example, system, this is just one example. You see how the community engagement, this is the system modeling approach gives you, that how these things, the social networking and education, create a hub, a cluster between the other things, that they have to work together if we want to have, for example, the good implementation. We cannot just look at one object of it. The system modeling gives you which component they have to work together in order to get an effective result. Or for example, if you want to improve your resiliency, which component should work together? If I have a certain budget, I want to, for example, improve one level, what component should I take? I should have, for example, this, or risk reduction and prevention along with this module. Or if I want to improve, for example, more, I have to bring social networking along with the reconstruction and recovery. And if I want to improve better, I have to bring education along with disaster response system. These items, they have to work together. That's what I said. People in the prevention or preparedness, they have different agenda. But sometimes we have to combine all these agenda together in order to achieve what we want. Or if you look at the housing, which is, I think, housing system is the main cause of human casualty. In any earthquake, most people die in the housing. And our housing system are not safe. Why? Because there is a challenge between the safety and economic. At the same time, we want to have a human dignity and welfare of the people. Therefore, the housing is not only technical issue, it's not only economic issue, it's also dignity, is a social value. And when we break it down, we come to so many parameters that these things have to work again together. For example, I model them. In order to have the safety, for example, of the housing, we need to consider this interaction, this modeling, to come up with a solution for affordable housing, safe and affordable. There's a balance between safety and affordability, between safety and economy. The cultural aspect, the technical aspect, the governance, economy, the environmental, the legal system, they have to have this interaction to be considered in order to have a safe and affordable housing. Therefore, the contractor, the property developer, the homeowner, all of them have to come into a complex stakeholder, which they have a conflicting interest. One was profit versus safety, speed versus quality, fast housing, compliance versus corruptions. All of this, they have to look in a system thinking, and in order to have a provided solution. When we have multiple stakeholders, each of them, they have different agenda. We have to converge a stakeholder agenda to a common agenda. That all of them, it will be a win-win situation for all stakeholders. For example, I use game theory for understanding the stakeholder behavior and challenges. It offers a realistic lens to understand how safety may be compromised, not by lack of knowledge, but by a strategic behavior between different points. There's a different approach. I'm not going to go because it's too. Therefore, different techniques can be used, either system thinking or this thing, to create a balance between all the stakeholders, all objectives, in order to understand, to come up with a win-win situation. For example, engineer versus builder, or engineer versus, for example, people. All of them try to see how we can align the misaligned incentives. I'm not going to go through it because it's short of time. I'm just showing different techniques can be. And finally, for our IDRiM society, in order for Norio's or our dream come true, I think we should provide a platform for bringing all scientists and technical players for effective implementation of science. Using the system approach, I think system approach, we need to go to system approach to identify the most effective action. Because we have so many actions to take. But we have to find what is the most effective ones that can provide the most simplified, understandable, and doable, culturally acceptable instruction with visible effect. I know if I take this medicine, tomorrow I'm good. I need visible effect on achieving safe and resilience progress and development, such as safe and affordable housing or safe and resilience urban system. Thank you so much.